All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dojo Talks. Today, we're going to be talking about specifically the nature of the U.S. Championship, maybe national championships in general. But first, and we're going to talk about how should they be structured. And I know that might seem a boring subject, but it gets me going. But first, I'm going to hand it over to Kostya, and he is in St. Louis, where the U.S. Championship is going on now, and he's going to give us a little bit of report, just what the flavor is there. And David, of course, has also been doing commentary for Chess.com, and he's going to talk a little bit about the U.S. Championship as it's happening. So, Kostya, first to you.
Yeah, currently, at the time of recording, it's the final rest day today. We're right in between rounds 8 and 9. And for those listening to this on the podcast later, of course, the champion is probably going to be determined by then. But as of now, we don't know who's going to win. We have 3 players leading. We have Wesley So, Sam Sevian, and Alex Lenderman. Sevian and Lenderman, of course, not being two of the favorites. So big story so far, I think, is that just, Fabi hasn't been playing well. He could have lost multiple games in the first couple of rounds. He was fortunate to save it against Dominguez. He was also worse earlier, and then he ended up losing 2 games back to back, very dramatically. Bounced back. He's had 1.5 out of 2 in those last 2 games, and now he's a point out of first. Actually, the U.S. Championships is very tight. I believe it's only 2 points that separates first and last place.
That's right.
So the top guys are all on +2 right now with 5 out of 8, and then last place is on 3 out of 8. And it's really anyone's tournament right now. To me, it feels like Wesley So is a clear favorite because he's one of the leaders and, the highest rated, most experienced, let's say. But I could see Dominguez winning it as well. I think he's only a half point behind right now. And he's, so far, it seems like he's just played very, very solid. He was in trouble in round 1, actually, against Lenderman. And then since then, I think he's been totally fine. Lenderman has been doing really, really well. Somehow he tends to perform well in the U.S. Open and the U.S. Championship. I don't know how he does it, but these are always his tournaments. So it's been very exciting. The U.S. Women's Championship is also really interesting. Big story there is that Carissa Yip is dominating. Katerina Nemcova also doing really well. But right now the leaders in the women's are Carissa with 6 out of 8, Nemcova 5.5. And Irina Krush is a point behind with 5 out of 8 with 3 rounds left. So I think those are the 3 kind of main players that actually have a chance. But the way Carissa has been playing, it's hard to see who can stop her. She already beat Krush. She beat Satansky. She's doing really, really well. To me, it's been really interesting to follow. I mean, I've been following the games live every day. David's also been doing commentary every day, so I'm sure he has quite a bit of insight as well. What do you think, David? Did I miss any big stories so far?
No, I would say the biggest story is Fabiano, like you said. And then I would say that Lenderman, Sevian, and Robson are all playing quite well as far as you've got 5 2700s in this tournament. I think before the tournament started, the odds of a non-2700 winning the U.S. Championship would have been considered really, really minimal, right? So the fact that Sevian and Lenderman and even Robson have a fair shot at winning the championship right now, I think is pretty notable, right? And that it's 3 of them, right? So the chance that one of those 3 ties for first in the U.S. Championship at this point is probably in the 20 to 30% range. So that would be pretty amazing. Any of those 3 players to get their first title, even if it's just a tie for first, would be really exciting. And I think all 3 of them will play it super well.
And then the final rounds are also very interesting because Wesley, he still has to play both Sevian and Robson, who are in contention, and Naroditsky. Mm-hmm. Sevian has to play Wesley, but then he gets to play Naroditsky and Burke, 2 of the players that are not doing that well.
Yeah.
And then Lenderman gets to play Caruana, Shankland, and Bruzone. So depending on how Caruana and Shanklin show up, like Lenderman also has some reasonable chances too.
Yeah. Maybe a bit of a tough road for him, but some chances.
Yeah, because I think he has white actually against the big guys. I believe he's white against Fabi, which is kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
What about you, Jesse? Have you been following the tournament, and to what?
Yeah, as to me, the story. Well, I'm a huge fan of Caruana, and now I'm just noticing he's lost loads of points. He's down to third, and Nepo is like only 4 points behind him. He's at 27.86. Nepo's at 27.82. Mm-hmm. It might be psychologically important for Nepo to reach the number 3 spot. So that could happen within a day or two. It could happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
I thought also the story is I didn't really have. I think Naka's got an attitude. Like, Naka, buddy, you listening? You got to be playing, buddy. You don't ditch the U.S. Championship. You play. Come on. Give me a break. That was the other story I felt.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it's his life and he can do what he wants with it.
Well.
Yeah. But it's important to know Naka will be playing in the Riga FIDE Grand Swiss, which starts like 5 days after the U.S. Championship ends.
Fabi's going to play too.
Fabi's going to play as well, which will be interesting to see how he does, because he's like supposedly the number 1 seed in that tournament, and he hasn't qualified yet for the next year's candidates, which I'm sure is on his mind.
Right.
So he's going to have to like fully reset and recharge.
Yeah. And frankly, it looks like he's got less in the tank than usual. I don't mean this as an insult to him. I just mean like there have been other Fabis that showed up at tournaments that were much more convincing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And actually, the players have been mentioning this. I think Wesley So mentioned it. Sam Shanklin mentioned it. Like, the players are pretty tired because they've been playing just like nonstop with the Grand Chess Tour, some of the online events. And then there was like Chess 9LX, now this event. So I think Shanklin's like not even playing in Riga, which was a bit surprising to me. But yeah, it's been a busy season for these guys.
Yeah, and for Wesley, the most of all. Wesley's played the most, so it makes sense that comment came from him. He's like the most tired. So, if he wins this tournament, that's going to be pretty crazy, because I think he was spotting the field like a pretty significant handicap. I think by a margin, he was the most tired coming into this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there was a question in the chat about qualification to the World Cup. I'm not sure. I know in the past, several players would qualify to the World Cup from the U.S. Championship, but I haven't heard specifically if there are any qualification spots on the line for this one.
That stuff is so obscure and always changing, like whether it counts as a zonal tournament. Now that FIDE no longer has interzonals as part of their World Championship cycle, it's kind of like random what is a zonal and who cares and how many spots there are and stuff. I mean, obviously the players who want a spot in the knockout, they figure it out and they care, and then tie breaks come in, but...
Right, and especially for fans, I mean, myself, I want it to be crystal clear, and a lot of times I go to Wikipedia and I'm just like, I have no idea. I have no idea. I can't figure it out, man. It's too hard.
Yeah, or you go to a web page for a tournament and it doesn't have basic info, like this tournament is a qualifier for that tournament. It has 4 spots in it.
Right. Well, to that end, let's talk about the U.S. Championship. We might talk about championships in a more like abstract way too, like we could talk about other countries' championships. And I thought what I would do is just a little bit of history, because I think it's kind of important to this. So the first thing people should know is that before 2001, the U.S. Championship, they were playing for peanuts. And they were truly then playing for a seed into like a qualification spot to an interzonal. We don't have interzonals anymore, right? But that was part of it, and they were just playing for peanuts, man. It was sad. It was really sad.
The money came from the USCF.
The money,
and the USCF, like, I don't know, the prize fund was like, like $1,000 or $2,000 for like the US champion. Like it was like ridiculous, and to the point where a couple of years they just didn't even run a US championship because the USCF didn't even have like enough money to like, to fly people to the same location. Like it's just nothing.
Right. So then in around 2001, it was Yvette Noggle, who is Yasser Serouan's wife, pulled it together, man, with Sarawat, and they like got money and they took it from the USCF. They took it. Give that thing to me. And then we've had since 2001 a variety of sponsors and qualification methods. First, it was in Seattle, and I played in those 2 tournaments. Then it was in San Diego, and I played in those 2 tournaments. Then it was in Oklahoma. These are all you can imagine. We don't have to go into depth, but these were various sponsors who felt disappointed. They were various sponsors who felt disappointed. Came to Oklahoma. There was drastically less money in Oklahoma, but we did that for 2 years. I played there. David played there too. And then St. Louis. And from there, we've been in St. Louis since, I think, 2010, I believe. And I played in that one, 2010. And so let me just describe it a little bit in general. The beautiful thing that Yvette and Yasser did was they created a competitive qualification system. And I can't tell you how cool this is for people like myself or, let's say, Kostya, if they have a sense of like, okay, this is what I need to do in order to qualify. It's a beautiful thing. Even if it's like a distant shot that you have, that anybody could say, get into it. And I'm really hoping that they reinstitute pathways into the U.S. Championship for normal people. That doesn't mean that it'll be easy for normal people to get in, but just that they have pathways. So, for example, and Kostya and David can correct me if I'm wrong, at the moment, the only way you can get in is if you win the Youth Championship, and if you win the U.S. Open, and I don't even think there's a wild card. I don't think so.
There's a wild card, which is Daniel Naroditsky.
Oh, right. Okay, so that one wild card, which honestly I don't approve of the wild card either. So, and back then we didn't have it. In the Yasser times, there was no wild card. But there was a lot more people. At 1 year, we reached a high of 64, where they combined the women in there as well. Mm-hmm. But in all those
other
cases,
times,
yeah.
At other times, you had fields of like about 30 players.
Right, exactly.
For a couple of those years.
And for example, I think that, say, the state championships should be a meaningful thing. For the most part, they aren't. But if the state championships were a qualifier to the U.S. championship, well, then it becomes a really interesting thing. Then me and Kostya are like, oh, we're going to win the state championship, dog. Now we're on. Now we want a path, and that's what a pathway does, right? It gives people motivation for these driving points in a year, in a calendar, to be like, all right, here's my shot. Maybe it's a distant shot, but at least I can do it. And then people...
That was one of the pathways for a while, is they had a tournament of state champions with one spot into the U.S. championship from that as well.
Exactly, right. And I think that's important. I also think if we had something like a Grand Prix system or just various tournaments that if you won them, there would be an entry point, I think that'd be great. I'm going to go ahead and say that it's a political thing that the U.S. Open gets to have a spot, because that tournament is really a joke. By the way, I qualified for the 2010 championship by winning the U.S. Open. And the reason it's a joke is that the first couple rounds you're playing weekies, and it's only in the later rounds that you are going to face some really stiff competition. So it becomes a real lottery at the end.
Yeah, because it's often only 9 rounds, and the top players only start clashing sometimes in round 6 or 7.
Right, exactly.
And then if you consider like a draw here or there, or somebody getting like 2 whites, it's suddenly like what? So basically, we played a 4-round tournament, and somebody got 3 whites out of 4 in the rounds that actually mattered. Or it's a 3-round tournament and somebody got 2 whites and then they qualified. So, or someone gets 1 pairing up or 1 pairing down, and that can just decide the whole thing. I'm with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. Personally, I don't mind the U.S. Open the way it is. It is a little bit of a lottery, but I mean, to me, it's more about whether like a deserving winner comes out of it, I guess. And seems like the last couple of years, they typically get some strong 2600, like a Lenderman or Gureyev. Mm-hmm. I think Shabalov won a couple of years ago, pretty recently, which was kind of cool to see. But Yeah,
mean,
I don't mind.
it's not that it's always producing a bad qualifier or anything like that. It's just that there are better options.
Right.
And as Jesse says, it's a political thing. It's the USCF's shtick, and it's one way that they prop up that tournament, the US Open. But there are all kinds of other pathways that might make sense and that could benefit from that kind of,
Yeah, I never even knew about the Tournament of State Champions, and that does sound pretty cool, because that would give more strong players an incentive to play the state championship. I know for the SoCal State Championship, they usually don't get the highest rated players in the state playing that one, because the prize fund's usually not that big. But with a potential spot to the US Championship, then yeah, it's like, well, it's kind of like a US Open thing, or you convince more players to play, but it's helpful for all the states, which kind of makes sense.
And as an example, what the senior tournament has that I'm going to be doing next year, thank you very much.
Nice.
There is a tournament of state, there is senior state championships now, and that's a very new thing. And then the winner, then at the US Open, there is a tournament of state champions that winner gets a spot in the US Senior. So that's like a model for how that kind of thing can work. And it also just, that event, for example, would I ever play in like a state senior championship? It wouldn't be the first thing on my mind. But now with that on the line, of course I'm going to play, of course I'm going to do. So that's an example of like, oh, of course, that's a way of getting people involved,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, I've been afraid that maybe my opinion is heavily biased by my own experience, where like Jesse, I played in the qualifiers. I thought it was really fun. I got into the US championships. I played in that. It was really fun. So maybe my opinion is super biased, but I think that the qualifiers are super good for chess, like up and down, like at every level. Because if you just consider this one option of the state championships, and we're saying, okay, normally the state championships are missing several of their best players. And then suddenly, let's say there is a qualification and the best players show up. Now the state championship as a tournament is propped up, right? That tournament does better. So that helps the organizer of that tournament. It helps the people who go there because there's more people there to play. It's more fun, more exciting to be at a big tournament. The players who qualify will be excited that they qualified. The players who get to play against the best players in their state because they're there will, enjoy the chance to play against the best players. I'm sure there's a bunch of people around here in California who would be like really happy if Kostya showed up at the California State Championships so they could play with him. So I think like it's not just, from my view, which could be wrong, it's not just the people who qualify who benefited from it, but it's like everybody up and down. And I recall that during several of those cycles, these tournaments were like full of players, and attendance was really, really high. Yeah. And I just think that's like a killer idea, and it's a real shame that they're not doing it. Mm-hmm. But it does run into one format question, which is how many spots do you make open for qualifiers? And then basically how big is your championship tournament, right? Because if you only have one possible spot and there's like 50 tournaments that like gradually seed to like one spot, it starts to become kind of a lottery ticket and like a little bit of a dream. But if you've got 10, 20 spots open, then you're already starting to talk about a different format for the US championship, right? You're really changing how that works. So there becomes a question of how much qualification do you want, even if you think that there should be qualification, and that has like a big impact on the structure eventually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it goes against my best interest, but I do like that the US Championship is this like closed 12-player round robin, especially now that there's like all these 2700s in the field. To me, that kind of seems right. Like we have so many strong players, it should just be like a round robin with all the strongest. And I mean, I would love to play, one of these like 64-player US Championships or like 32-player, but then I think it like, I don't know, it's not. Yeah, for me, it kind of takes away some of the prestige of the event.
Well, for example, I mean, I'm not saying, I think a good model could be 6 by rating, 1 as a junior champion, and then the rest by qualification.
So you're leaving like 5 spots for qualification.
Yeah.
And then you're saying basically like all the 2,600 GMs around the country are going to have to participate in qualifiers, and Kostya won't get in, but he'll get to face those.
He might get in, dude. He might get in, man. No, and I want to say, like, for example, I really want to stress this. I'm pretty certain I wouldn't have gone for it in terms of going for the GM title in the early 2000s. Well, I don't know. I wouldn't say I wouldn't have gone for it, but it was a very big deal that I had those events like on my calendar, and it was like, okay, we're going to do this. And then being able, because let me just say, like, you play in American Opens, there's not a lot of, it's not a beautiful thing. It's not you're next to some dude and you're elbowing him right there, man. And now they make you wear this mask and it's all really intense. But, you play in a great event like the U.S. Championship where there's beautiful conditions and it's quiet and the lighting is correct. And it's like, thank you. This is why I'm playing chess, So there was like a dream for like a little bit of chess culture at the end of all the struggle. There would be that dream of chess culture. And that's the same reason why right now making it to the senior championship is a goal of mine. It's not just like, oh, I want to say I won the U.S. senior championship or I played in it. I mean, that's cool too, but I just want that experience where I can then, one game a day, and then we'll hang out afterwards and we'll talk about chess. We'll talk about the game, the whole experience, which I got out of the U.S. championship. Playing it in all those years is a big deal.
Yeah. And okay, some credit there goes to the St. Louis Chess Club, because pretty much all the events they put on have like incredible conditions for the players.
Right.
Even like these like dinky little like I Am Norm round robins, they treat the players really, really well for those.
You're right. Absolutely.
So you're Jesse, you're going to play in the next year U.S. Senior? Is that the plan?
Honestly, it's a little tricky this first year because I think I have to wait until I'm 50 before I'm allowed to play in certain qualifying events, And so maybe they should give me the honorary spot, right? They should give me the honorary spots because of that.
Well, you are a streamer, so you've got that going for you. I think that's how they picked the wild card this year.
That's right.
Probably that will continue to be the case.
I actually don't think there should be a wild card, but I think it will be difficult in my first year just because there's all these events. I don't think I'm going to be able to, get in before as a qualifier.
Yeah. Well, let me suggest a concept which I think can both keep prestige in the final championship event and make the qualification like a fun process all the way up. If you wanted to keep the U.S. Championship like closed to 12 players or so, which I'm not yet saying if I do or don't, but you could have like the tournament before that be like a really prestigious event as well that qualifies the last like 5 spots. Instead of each of them coming from one different event, you could have your events around the country, like the state championships and the Chicago Open can have 2 spots and whatever, any event you want to prop up or promote or whatever, right?
Right.
You get these people and you create sort of like a super Swiss that's like the qualifying stage, right? And in that event, you've got your 40 or 50 player Swiss that would look a little bit like what the U.S. Championships looked like for a moment there in 2001 to 2008. And then for players who don't quite make it to the prestigious championships, they still get to play in that really great practice that would be that 40 player Swiss with like probably 30 GMs and 10 talented IMs and some juniors and stuff. And they don't get to play in that final event, but they still get to play like an absolutely super event and feel like, hey, we got to level 2 or level 3 in the qualification. And I don't know exactly how the Russian championship works, but it's called like the like finals because they've got some version of like tiers along the way, right?
Yeah. And that's been a dream. Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say briefly, like back in the day too. Like if you look at the the USSR quarterfinals and then semifinals, those were strong tournaments, man.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. That was I think that's a model for how we could be doing it.
Yes. So that's something that I'm saying I'm strongly in favor of right now.
Yeah.
Is that like, and then you can judge, like maybe you didn't get to the championship, but you got to the quarterfinals, and like next year you're trying to get to the semifinals, and wherever you're at, you're playing people at a good level for you, getting excellent practice and dreaming up, and it's supporting all the tournaments that are within that qualification.
Right.
Yeah, I really want to talk about how the Russians do it, because that seems like an interesting. I was hoping one of you guys had a specific knowledge, because I think it's just like multiple leagues and then you like qualify up and up. What I wanted to say is that for Southern California, actually the way they do their state championship is very similar to what David was describing. At least a few years ago, they would have the state championship, which is a closed, I think, 8-player round robin. And then I think it would be like the previous state champion and then 5 spots by rating. And then 2 spots would be given to the SCCF, Southern California Chess Federation qualifier event, which was a big Super Swiss, a 4-round Super Swiss that gives up 2 spots. But to get into that qualifier, you need to be either like, above 2400, something like that. But they also give out spots via all the open tournaments that take place, or at least used to, in Southern California. So there would be like 2 spots from the American Open, 2 spots from like the Southwest Open, all these different events. And that's actually how I got into the qualifier, I think once or twice, just by qualifying through one of those events. And actually to your guys' point, it was very motivating to feel like, there's this tournament next summer. I have to play in these open tournaments to try to qualify, and then I have to try to qualify from there. And I did actually. One year I got very lucky and got into like the top 2, and then got to play my first Southern California state championship, which was awesome. And it was still, a very strong and prestigious event.
All right. So it sounds like all 3 of us, just to like sum up and be clear, we're all in favor of qualification and maybe one of these systems with tiers. And you could have that at the state level. You can also have that at the national level. And I think it props all those tournaments up. I think we all agree that it sort of supports all those tournaments, and the players at any rating level will benefit from that being in place.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess a remaining question I have for all of you about how national championships should be structured is, do you like the format of a Swiss, of a round robin, or of a Swiss, or of a knockout, or something else? Like if you were to set up U.S. championships, if Rex died and left the St. Louis Chess Club to you and his will, how would you organize a national championship? Give me all the details.
Okay, I haven't super thought it out, but I really like the idea of, I think, ending with a knockout. So just spitballing here, to me, I love the idea of like a super strong round robin, just because I like the tradition, like Fischer winning all these events, 11-0 score. It's just like almost always been just like a very strong round robin with all the best players. And now we have so much talent that it makes sense. And these guys are, clearly the ones with the best chance. But then to finish, the thing I never liked is when, you have 2 players tied for first and going into the last round. One of them is white against like the last place guy. Another one is black against another one of the favorites. And it's just like this weird final round where there's so much tension and they're both trying to like score a point. And then maybe there's a playoff if they're tied. I kind of like, you just take the top 4 after 9 rounds or whatever, and then you put them in the knockout. 1 plays 4, 2 plays 3, and then the winners play each other. And then, whatever the knockout system is, I don't know, maybe it's more classical to start and then some rapid tiebreak, like similar to the World Cup, how they finish it. Of course, it takes a lot more time, but I think a 4-player knockout is super exciting. I think that's what they do for the Grand Chess Tour, or at least they did for a couple of years. They had this like knockout final.
Right. Would you like to see 2-game or 4-game matches of classical between those top 4 players before they get into rapid or blitz as tiebreaks?
I would say just 2 games, because the tournament is already pretty long as it is. So I wouldn't want to extend it like an insane amount.
Okay. Jesse, what does your tournament look like?
So we got 6 places by rating, and that's because a lot of those guys never play in the U.S., and I'm okay with that. They're out playing in Europe all the time, and if they got the rating, that's fine. So 6 places by rating, 1 as the junior. That's been a tradition that I think has always been good. And then the remaining 5 spots will be, 1 is a tournament of U.S. state champions. They come together and they play this tournament. And some of those states are so small, they wouldn't even send somebody. Alaska might not send somebody. Fine. It doesn't have to be 50 people. That's fine. Whoever comes, comes. And then the remaining 4 spots will be the biggest, the most moneyed tournaments in the United States of the year before. So imagine then, and by the way, one of the tricks that happens when you go to the Grand Prix page on the USCF site is they list Grand Prix points by total money. That is like under 1,800 prize, under 1,600 prize. When we do it this my way, those prizes don't count. It only counts how much money you have in the open section. So the 4 tournaments with the biggest money of the year before will get a qualifying spot for the next year based on how much money they had. And that will provide incentive for the tournaments to raise the bar in terms of how much money they have, and to create it so that the money incentive will drive the best players to those events naturally anyway. Beautiful. Oh man. And then for guys like me, that would be like, right, well, those are the 4 tournaments I'm playing. Those are the 4 tournaments I'm playing that year. Or maybe 5 if I'm trying for the state championship too. It would give me like a clear calendar and path to be like, those are the quality events that I'm going to play in this year. And
all right, you're throwing a lot of cool ideas at us, Jesse. So can I just interrupt to clarify, just to make sure that I and everybody else has understood? You're ending up with 12 players.
Yep.
With your qualification, right? And are you saying that if last year the top 4 money turns were, Chicago, World Open, US Open, and Continental Open or something like that, and I'm running the California Open, if I add $100,000 to my prize fund next year, then I could get the qualification spot at my tournament instead of at one of those other tournaments?
That's right.
So there's no setup where like somebody's just got an in, their tournament always gets the spot. It's really any organizer is kind of competing to be the tournament with that spot.
That's right.
Okay, I got you. Keep going.
All right. And I really want to say it's very important, like when you look at tournaments and they say 300 Grand Prix points, a lot of times that's because there's like $20,000 first place for the under 1,200 section. That money doesn't count. You can do that, fine. I'm not opposed to it. But for this qualification spot, it only matters what you have as money in the top section, the open section, which anybody can play in, right?
Yeah.
Anybody can play in the open.
That's right. Okay, now you've got your 12 players. What do?
It's a round robin, just like Kostya said, man, classical. We've been doing it it goes back for over 100 years. This is a great tradition. Let's keep it going. Yeah.
So you just want it exactly like it is now? You don't.
The difference I would have is I think the women should play at a different time, simply with the hope that there'll be a woman who someday qualifies for the U.S. Championship, and then she can play.
You'd want her to play in both.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there was one year where Irina Krush could have played in either one.
Right.
Yeah.
I think maybe they were giving a spot to the U.S. Women's Champion, or I don't remember exactly how she was qualified, but she had a choice. Right. And I actually don't even remember which one she picked.
Also, when there was the whole qualification system and the tournament was bigger, and Jesse and I got in, she got in that way as well.
Right.
To qualifying. So Jesse, you'll just play a 12-round round robin like now? No knockouts, no funny business.
Yeah. I'm flexible. Like the events we played in, I especially remember fondly the one we had in San Diego. It was great. I think that was maybe 20, 25, 30. That was beautiful as well, got to say. But I think what the strong players object to, and I think it's reasonably fair, is they object to the randomness of 30 people. And I get it. I totally understand that. So, but with this, it's basically going to be 12 people. It will be close to the same standard of people that we have now, but it will just be with the chance of chumps like me and Kostya getting in. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I've got one or two problems with the current format that I'd like to switch a little bit. So one thing I don't like is people having uneven whites and blacks in the championship. So one possible fix to that is actually you have like 11 or 13 players in a tournament instead of 12, and there's sort of like a rotating bye. But everyone gets, 6 whites and 6 blacks, let's say. And that just creates one extra rest day that's kind of rotating around.
That creates a little bit of imbalance too, right?
It's a tiny imbalance that someone might have a better or a more optimal rest day than somebody else. Yeah, but I think that's like much less of a big deal than an extra black would be, right? So like if I had the choice to like go into the last round and I'm in competition for first with you, and my choice is either you get white against somebody and I get black against somebody, or you get a rest day the day before and you still have to play black. Like for sure, I would say like, okay, give him the rest day, make him play black. So I think that's a bit of a problem. I don't love that. Well, I don't tolerate it. It may seem like a tiny detail to some, but like it just rubs me the wrong way. Like so many tournaments that are like 9 rounds long when they could just be 8 or 10 or whatever. I've
always liked the idea as well of, I think the London Classic did this, of just having the rest day player join the commentary team, at least for like an hour or something. Because I think that's just great for the fans, get like Wesley So making fun of his other competitors or whatever.
Yeah. That's an idea I had like a decade ago. And then when London used it, I was like, yes, use my idea. So yeah, having them rotate through. I think when you get to something important, like a championship tournament, I think asking someone to spend like their whole rest day doing like 5 or 6 hours of commentary on like a championship tournament is is like maybe a little bit too much. But as you say, like a 1 hour appearance on there could be like super cool.
Yeah.
And okay, so first of all, I would make it like an even number of rounds. And I even like the idea of somehow making it a double round robin. So like reducing the number of players in the final stage to maybe like 8 or something like that, and have a double round robin. And I know I'm kicking some people out, but I would make my sort of like second league or whatever, semifinal. I would make it like a super awesome tournament so that we don't have to feel too bad for the people who played in that one, I think. So I think that's what I'd like, probably a double round robin, 8 players.
Yeah, and then some kind of, you got your super final, you got your higher league. I still don't know the breakdown of the Russian. It's like you got the higher league, which I think is the third or second one.
Okay.
And then the super final, that's the last one.
Yeah.
Which implies that there's a final somewhere, but I don't quite get it.
Yeah, the super final is definitely the final right now. And I'm pretty sure it's got 12 players right now, of whom 5 of them are 2,700 and 7 of them are in the 2,600s. And actually, the U.S. Championship has a slightly higher average rating than the Russian Championship, although they're very, very close.
Yeah, not all the top players play in the Russian Championship as well, right? Because they've had a few winners that are like, I don't think it's a 2,700 every year. Mm-hmm. And like Kramnik, for example, doesn't play every year.
Yeah, they're missing several players this year. And I wonder about that. The U.S. Championships rarely misses many of its top players, and the Russian Super Final is a little bit spottier. So there may be some issue there with either scheduling or prize money or qualification, something that isn't always working out for their best players. But I would say if your national championship is missing more than 1 or 2 of your top players, you're probably doing something wrong with the organization, right? Like, if Nakamura wants to stream, like, what can you do about it? But if you've got 4 or 5 2,700s in Russia who aren't playing in it, something went wrong. I noticed Artemyev is playing in like the side events, which is the last topic I want to get your opinions about. But Artemiev is playing like the Russian Blitz Championship, Russian Rapid Championship, stuff like that, which are held at the same time. But he's not in the super final. And so, like, you know, I wonder, it means he's like available, right? So did he fail in qualification, or, you know, were there problems with the format or something like that? I don't know, but there's enough people missing. Karyakin, Nepo, Kramnik, Svidler,
right?
Bob.
Yeah, and it's not just because of Nepo, as someone is saying in the chat, because this happens in I think almost every year that I follow the Russian championship. It's not all the top players playing, so they're often missing a lot of their top guys.
And that's like, I just listed like 7 names, right? Who all could conceivably be there and are like 100 points higher than some of the people who are there. So I don't know exactly what the deal is, but I do like the tiers. And my last question to both of you is, how do you feel about having other events at the same time as the championship? Either right before, right after, but, you know, sort of like sort of building it into a kind of chess festival. And 2 examples, the Russian one I just said, they've got a team blitz championship, they've got a rapid team championship, they've got individual rapid championship, individual blitz championship, women's championship, and all those other tournaments as women's only divisions as well. So that's at least 10 tournaments going on right now in Russia. And I was looking up the German national championships, and likewise they ran about like 8 tournaments at the same time, including their version of the US Open as a German Open Championship and a German Closed Championship and a Women's Championship and a Senior Championship and a Blitz and a Rapid and a Senior Blitz and Senior Rapid, blah, blah, blah. So they've got like, you know, 10 events. How do you feel about that? Would you like to stack some events together? Would you like to see a National Rapid or Blitz for the US?
I think in general, I think that it's such a holy event that the players shouldn't be thinking about doing rapid or blitz on the side. But if, for example, the U.S. Open wanted to be held in the same spot, like let's say in St. Louis, that would be great for chess fans, because I feel like there isn't a big tournament in St. Louis, for example, and a lot of players, I always tell people, like, once in your life you need to go to St. Louis as a pilgrimage just to go check it out. And the U.S. Championship is a great time to go visit the club, because you can watch the games and then you watch the commentary, but also if you just hang out, at the club, you're going to have these players come down and analyze their games, and it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So you'd like some kind of a big classic open tournament.
Right. But I am not a fan of like doing, like a lot of these tournaments I go to, they're like, come play a blitz tournament at 11 o'clock tonight. No. I don't want to do that.
Yeah. I do wish we had a more developed like US Blitz, US Rapid Championship. I mean, I think these tournaments do exist, but they're always like, I don't know, they're like held at like random places or random events, and
they're held as like open tournaments with minimal advertising or prize fund, and you don't get the top players, right? So like Chess Numbers in chat is saying like, well, like you're trying to get Wesley So to show up to your national championship. Okay. Like, but now you're going to ask him to play 3 or 4 events in a row. How do you get him to commit to that? But to that point, I would just say, well, like these guys all just played like a rapid and a Fisher Random rapid tournament in St. Louis, you know, like a week before this. So they already played like several events in a row in a sense. And I think it could be cool to do that. I'm not married to the idea. I would put it in like decreasing order of holiness. So you'd start with the championships, and then you'd have like a day or 2 off, and then you'd have the US Rapid Championships. Right. And those who wanted to could stick around for that. And if they were good money, then for them, it's cutting down on travel time and stuff. Right. So
I don't think that's necessary. I mean, right now, like, so the World Rapid and Blitz, that's like a 5-day event, I think. 3 days for Rapid, 2 days for Blitz, and you get 2 champions. So, I mean, if it's like a 5-day event, like you could just hold it in December or, you know, November or whatever. But like,
I'm fine with that too. Just holding it as a separate thing.
As long as you have enough space. I think that would be really, really cool.
Yeah. But I'm definitely in favor of Jesse's idea of having some kind of a tournament for everybody except the championship, right, so that there'd be an extra reason for everybody to be in town at that time. And I'm also in agreement with Jesse keeping the women's championship at a different time and keeping the senior championship at a different time, so those players could conceivably compete in, a senior female could compete in all three.
Right.
Yeah, similar structure. Actually, I think they have a like Waikanze, right? They have the C group, the B group. You qualify for the A group, and then they have this like massive tournament for everyone else that's not in the one of these top three groups.
Right.
Yeah.
And it seems like Waikanze is one of the great tournaments year round.
Sure, absolutely. One of the coolest scenes I've ever seen was going to Waikanze one year and seeing like the A group, the B group, the C group, and then the Open, and it was just fantastic. There were so many people there, and it's just awesome to be near the good players.
For sure. Okay, beautiful. Well, that was our Dojo Talks for today. We'll continue. If you have a topic you would like us to discuss, send us a tweet or something. We'll check it out, and we try to do this once a week. So, everybody, thank you. And Kostya, do we have anybody streaming next?
Let's close out the podcast. Please subscribe, review the podcast. We never do this. Subscribe to the YouTube, all the usual stuff. Let's cut it there. Thanks everyone for listening.